So the first weekend of the XFL is come and gone. How was it? So overall, I thought it was pretty damn good, and the general attitude on Twitter seems to agree. But as you know, that don't mean that it was perfect. I got some good, we got some great, we got some bad, and we got some ugly. So there was a lot of good things about this new version of the XFL. And one of those good things was the fact that it didn't feel like the new XFL. Let me explain. In 2020, the XFL was putting together a solid relaunch before they got taken out mid-season by the pandemic. Things was going pretty well, but they was forced to call it quits midway through their very first season. But within those 5 games, they established them a style, some rhythm for the broadcast, and even a little history. And the 2023 version, though it's 3 years later, feels like a natural continuation of 2020. They can reference this history of guys who played in the XFL and then went on to play in the NFL. You got PJ Walker, Taylor Heineke, and a really long list of other players. What I'm trying to say is that even though their first season wasn't completed, it's nice to see they were still able to build up momentum. And though it was only 5 games 3 whole years ago, like the momentum and the vibe just picked up right where it left off. Also, once again, the quality of play as a whole is good. Some of the catches made, hard hits, defensive back play is all quality ball, and these dudes be playing hard, as it's the last opportunity for most of these cats. So they starving to make it work, and it feels great to watch. They not only need to perform well, they need the league to perform well. Because if the league goes under, their dream can go under with it. So you see a concerted effort to make things work. You know how in the NBA and sometimes in the NFL, some players can have these real contentious relationships with the media. But those leagues are so big, the players don't think they need the media. You see the same thing with some coaches. They treat the media bad. Now, sometimes the media do be asking dumb questions, and sometimes they be out of pocket like Tampa Bay media was with Gio. But these interviews are there for a reason, my dude, to sell the league and build the fans. And since this is a startup, everybody understands that this is essential.
Jontre Kirkland, describe it, that touchdown play right there.
I said it hit the gritty.
Also, the talent pool is good. We got former first rounders and NFL starters like Martavius Bryant. Josh Gordon was going in. Vic Beasley was out there. Remember Kalen Ballage from Arizona State? De'Aaron King from Miami? Marquette King? Josh Gordon at one point was one of the best receivers in the league, and he's out here in the XFL looking swaggy wearing number 0. Another thing I'll put in the good category that might be underrated is the storytelling of the league, bro. It's actually pretty good. The Player 54 9-part series they produced look fire. It's got that Hard Knocks feel, but it's way bigger in scope. So instead of watching a couple players try to make the tail end of a roster, you're now watching those players try to build their own league. If they fail, they don't just get cut and go work a regular job. The whole league is trying to make it, so the stakes are much higher. First off, just the name Player 54, that's hard. I love that the name means something. It's 53 players on the NFL roster, so being a 54th means you just didn't make it. I've always said if only 1% of athletes make it pro, then 99th percentile. The guys who have it the worst and trying to move on with their lives are the ones who fall right there in that 98th percentile. For those guys, they're so close that it's hard for them to stop. And I've always loved the spring leagues because it gives those dudes somewhere to go. I really wish it was around when I left college, and I don't even mean for me, I mean for my friends. I had some boys who was cold and could have played in this league. With a name like Player 54, they've embraced that underdog mentality. So we're watching a whole league with a chip on his shoulder. Now, The Rock being a co-owner melds into that perfectly. If you know his story, he was one of those fringe players back in the day. Had to go to the CFL and he got cut from that league. So even though he's The Rock, he's been Player 54. And it's dope to get to see even the owners of a league putting in work, which builds that connection. Where the NFL does their best to keep you out, the XFL does their best to invite you in. The three owners went to every single game this weekend, and they didn't just show their faces, they engaged with the crowd. I don't know how everybody feel about this, but I really liked it. It shows they care about the league. It's not just passive income. Another thing I put in a good section are the unique rules. It's nothing I want the NFL to adopt, but I like it in the XFL. The kickoffs with the guys lining up 5 yards apart, but they can't move until the returner catches the ball. I like that. It creates a variety of return opportunities that distinguish it from the NFL and college games. Not to mention the logic makes sense. You want to reduce collisions? This is a great way to do it. And it's a way to do it while maintaining excitement in the return game. So the extra point rules might be the best of them all, as you can go for 1, go for 2, or go for 3. Now you don't kick at all on your extra point attempts. You get 1 play to convert from a specific spot on the field. For 1 point, you run a play from the 2-yard line. For 2 points, you run a play from the 5-yard line. If you want 3, you gotta run a play from the 10-yard line. So at the end, instead of watching a clock run out, you still watching a game. You got 1 shot. Do not miss your chance to blow a lead wide open or your opponent can come back. It might sound gimmicky, but it works surprisingly well. For one, it's more football plays throughout the course of a game, and it adds in a whole nother layer of strategy. But most importantly, it allows teams to come back from big deficits. We got a real good example in the last game of day 2. We had St. Louis versus San Antonio. Through 3 quarters, this was the most boring game of the weekend. But at the end of the game, it went from worst to first. So St. Louis was down. They was losing 12-3. It's the 4th quarter with only 3 minutes left in the game. San Antonio hits a 48-yard field goal. Now they up 15-3 with 3 minutes left. The game should be over. The audience should be bored. But thanks entirely to these rules, we end up getting a classic. All of a sudden, AJ McCarron drives down the field. We get some fire catches, and next thing you know, it's 15-9. St. Louis goes for 3, and they actually get it. Thanks to the extra point rules, now it's a field goal game. But you gotta earn them 3 points, so it doesn't feel cheap. The extra point rules then mesh with another unique rule, and together they ensure that you play to the last whistle. They got a kinda crazy but real cool onside kick rule. Now you can kick a normal onside kick, that's an option. But if the game is tied or you're trailing in the 4th, so it's gotta be the 4th quarter and you gotta be down or tied. If that's the case, after you score, you can attempt a 4th and 15 from your own 25. If you don't get it, the opposing team gets the ball there. It's a turnover on downs, game over. But if you convert the 4th and 15 play, it's a first down and you keep the ball wherever the play ended. So St. Louis goes for the 4th and 15. McCarron buys some time and they actually get it. Now instead of being bored, we get a last second drive to win or lose, and I'll just show y'all the rest.
For the explanation, quick show out of the backfield to Hill. Hill's got some space. He'll make it a man miss, gets out of bounds. Pressure comes. McCarron has Hill hit immediately. 3rd and 7. McCarron has a receiver. Caught! Touchdown St. Louis and a flag on the play.
The result of the play is a touchdown.
And LaCale London ends the game in improbable fashion for the battle.
All right, moving on to the great. Transparency into the process. The challenge system is dope. I love how it's set up. It really gives you that behind the scenes look into the process. They got Dean Blandino, former longtime NFL director of officiating, so he brings some credibility. So you got Dean Blandino stationed in the replay booth, and when they challenge a play, you cut to him live. You can see him, you can hear him, and you can see what he's seeing. You hear everything he's saying to the ref back on the field. This process brings the fans in instead of alienating us, which goes a long way with fan trust and how we see you. But in weekend 1, we saw that it won't fix every problem, as it still couldn't save us from the ugliest moment of the weekend. But it's still refreshing to be able to see into the replay booth, and even when they mess up, you can empathize with the league. I'll talk more about this one situation in the ugly section, but I got one more great thing I want to talk about before moving to bad. So for another great thing, bro, I'd have to say the crowds. Bro, just like in 2020, these crowds be showing up. And I kind of called the league out in my head because they put St. Louis on the road in week 1, which I thought was dumb. Cause St. Louis had that crazy ass crowd in 2020. Probably a whole bunch of Rams fans looking for a new home. But they put that team on the road in the new city of San Antonio. But that San Antonio crowd was in there, bro. They was amazing. Or they was amazing till they took away their beer snake, which after only 6 games is already tradition. Give the people back their beer snake. We like when they get crazy. It just adds to the atmosphere, and it's only right. Another bad thing would be the lack of elite talent, specifically at the quarterback position. See, back in 2020, PJ Walker was a godsend, but this year we still gotta see who will rise to the top. Maybe it's De'Aaron King, but he's splitting time with Te'amu. Then you got your NFL bounce backs and your spring league regulars. But the XFL at some point will need more talent at football's most coveted and most highly watched position. The skill guys was on point and the trench play felt solid in 3 out of the 4 games, but the quarterbacks was lacking. Also, in the very first game of day 2, the referee spotted the ball on the wrong hash mark. AJ McCarron, who played at Bama and got drafted by the Bengals, has to call it out to the ref on the first play of the game. And it's not like he's just pointing and we're guessing what he's saying, bro. He's mic'd up directly into the live feed of the game. So you can hear him screaming, "Hey, it's college hash, it's college hash." If you was tuning in for the first time, they might have lost you right there. So the ref moved the ball and it was inconsequential, but I have to put it in the bag for starting off day 2 like that. And now we move on to the ugly. They got caught in a terrible situation with a very hard call on the first drive of game 2. This is a tough play to officiate, I could give them that much, and they took us up into the replay booth, but there was an issue. Dean did not have the right camera angle to be able to clearly see where the ball even is. And since the ref on the field panicked and called this a touchdown, Dean simply didn't have a good enough angle to overturn it. But moments after we left the booth, we got a way better angle where it was more clear at least that this was not a touchdown. If the DB and receiver end up fighting for possession and it's 50-50, the touchdown does go to the offense. That's in the NFL, college, every level of football I know of. So I get why the ref on the field called it a touchdown. But we saw the whole process and how they tried to make the ruling. We heard the explanation live, but they still got it wrong. This is a pick, but it went down as a touchdown early in the first primetime game. That's tough. I checked Twitter right after, and people who was just tuning in was already talking down on the league after this one call. What helped them out is that it had no effect on the outcome. Orlando needed that 6 because they got beat by 21. But all in all, weekend 1 was pretty good. I enjoyed it and most people I talked to seemed to agree. So XFL weekend 1 in my book was a big W, and it really got me excited to see what week 2 has to bring.